Okay, for today's video, we are going to go over the midpoint formula and the distance formula. So the midpoint formula you see is below on the left-hand side. So what it means is that we're going to take the x's, add them together, divide by 2, take the y's together, divide by 2. So basically you're trying to find the middle between the 2 points, or the average, or the median, okay? So what we're going to do, I find it's a lot easier if you label x1, y1. The 1 just means it's your first point, x2, y2. And we're going to add, so to get our midpoint, we're going to add the x's together and divide by 2. And then we're going to add the y's together. Always bring the sign with you and divide by 2. And we usually are going to get a point. So we're going to get negative 7 plus 12. So we get 5 over 2. And then we get 0 plus a negative 5 over 2. And you can leave it as a fraction, or you can go ahead and divide it and get a decimal. Either one will work. Oops. I was writing the numbers too quick. And it would be a negative 2.5. Okay, same thing with the next one. First thing, label. And you're going to see that we do like labeling. It makes everything a lot easier. M just means for midpoint. Take your first x, add it to your second x, divide by 2, and then do the same with your y's. Negative 4 plus a negative 2 is negative 6 over 2. Negative 4 plus a negative 8, negative 12 over 2. These we can simplify. So negative 6 over 2 is negative 3. And negative 12 over 2 is negative 6. And there is your answers for midpoint. The next one we're going to do is the distance formula. This one, again, we are going to be labeling, but it is a little bit bigger formula. So the distance formula is just trying to figure out how far apart the 2 points are. What is those distance? And so if you look at the formula below, we're going to take the square root, and usually on your calculators, you're going to have to do a second and then the square root button. Or if you're on your phone doing it, you're going to turn your phone sideways. You're going to push the second button, so 2 and D, and then it should be where you had the square button. So x squared button would be in the same place. And I have my calculator right next to me, so I have it ready. So what we're going to do, x1, y1, x2, y2, always label. Now this one is a little bit different because we're not going to start with x1. We're actually starting with x2. So we're taking our second x minus our first x and then square it, plus our second y minus our first y. Make sure you take it and then square it. I like to do each of the parentheses separately. It just makes it a little bit easier. And I'm just going to write it right under. So 0 minus 4 is negative 4. And if I square it, so negative 4 squared is going to give me 16. Plus, and then if I do 3 minus negative 6, that's going to give me 9. 9 squared is 81. And then if I put it all together, I add them together, I'm going to get 97. Okay, now here's where you're going to go ahead and use the square root button. So you're going to go second and then x squared, put 97, and then you should have an answer. And this one's an approximate answer. The square root is your exact answer. The approximate, we're usually going to write it, and if I write it, it's going to be this big number, and it will continue. We're usually writing it just to second decimal place. So we want to write it to this one, but we look at what's after. If the number after the second number is 5 or bigger, this 4 is now going to be a 5. We're going to round it up. Okay, now let's do the same thing with the next one. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. We're going to put it in our square roots. And if you have a good calculator, you can actually put in almost everything except the square root. Do the square root last. Same thing. Okay, second. So take our second x minus our first x, square it, plus our second y minus our first y, square it. Okay, and I know that two negatives make a positive, and I know negative 13 plus 4 is going to give me negative 9 squared. Negative 12 minus 2 is negative 12 squared. I'm just rewriting it. So negative 9 squared is 81. Negative 12 squared is 144. And you're going to add them together. And you're going to get 225. And then you're going to take the square root of it. And sometimes it works perfectly. You can get an answer of a perfect number, 15. So that is midpoint and distance formula.